Welcome to Give Me Credit. Hi, everyone. I'm J.S. Waldo. Let me say my own name correctly. Author of Mortgage Lending Explained. And this is our credit guru right here, John Mackey, author of Credit Genius and Incognito. You can find us both on Substack on our respective pages, jswaldo.substack.com, and John is at creditgenius.substack.com. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Thank you.
Looks
What
like
a
you brought us
wonderful
another
introduction.
guest.
Yeah. You know what? I am too. I love this guy. He's been in my life, real estate life for, I think since he came in. I think initially I met him as an instructor over at ProSource, but Mike has been a steady presence in Minnesota real estate since about the early 1990s, building his career from the ground up in an industry that tends to reward production over education. Now, over the years, he operated as a broker and led a multi-office real estate company, while also personally listing and selling a significant number of homes, meaning he just didn't manage agents, he worked in the trenches alongside of them. In 2002, he shifted his focus towards education, stepping into a role that most industry treat as an afterthought, but quietly controls the pipeline, training new realtors. He went on to establish what is known as the Realty School, a licensing and continuing education platform designed to prepare individuals entering real estate as well as those maintaining and expanding their credentials. Today, Michael works full-time in education, focusing on pre-licensing, continuing ed, and investor training. Instead of chasing transactions, he's shaping the people who will, teaching not just how to pass the test, but how to operate within a system that is often taught at a surface level and rarely explained in full. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, John. Thank you, JS.
We're very happy to have you. Mike, I'm going to jump right in here. You've been teaching real estate for a long time, and I've spent my career working on the credit side of transactions. I'm a 35 plus year underwriter, mortgage underwriter. So what I'd like to do today is walk through how agents are trained and how that training connects to what really happens when a buyer tries to get approved and close a deal. So let's start at the center of the transaction.
Okay, as you know, Mike, I was a realtor beginning in 1987, 88. And from my years as a real estate agent broker, I've always seen the realtor as the center of the home buying process, kind of like a hub connecting buyers to lenders, title companies, and other services, while listing agents handle the market side. Do you see it that way? And if so, would it make sense for agents to have a strong understanding of credit, which is where my forte is? To better guide both buyers and sellers.
Well, yeah, I think that you're 100% correct in that the buyer side, the buyer brokers are making the inroads when dealing with the selection of the lender, the closing company, even to the point of contractors and inspectors. So on the listing side, of course, they're doing all the marketing, trying to get the buyer's agents to show the listings and so forth. But the buyer is handling more on the financing side of things. And I would say a good hub and spoke type of analogy is perfect in that, yeah, they pretty much are the connecting of the dots for the buy side. That's crucial. It's 50% of the transaction is one side is listing it, the other side is helping the buyer. So
Right.
Yeah, I would say that the buy side is definitely the hub.
Okay.
Do you think that success in real estate is still mostly defined by getting listings rather than helping buyers? And if that's true, how does that shape how agents are trained and the level of attention given to buyer readiness?
Ooh, wonderful question. There was an old saying back in the 90s, list to live, buy and die. That if an agent was working with buyers, it was a kind of a hamster wheel that you wouldn't get off. And it's interesting to see that they take a perspective like that when 50% of the transaction are buyers. So I think that the tide is shifted quite a bit. And what we're seeing in the marketplace today is that buyer leads, when agents are coming into the trade, agents are willing to pay third-party aggregating websites up to 40% of their commission for good leads of buyers, and they're willing to give up 40% of their commission for that buyer lead. So I would say it's a ship that's slowly changing its direction in terms of where we're at, especially in a market which we are currently in, where listings are very low amount of supply. There are an abundance of buyers, but are they qualified buyers ready to go? That's the hard part to discern.
Yeah. I did, when I first got into real estate, and I'm not going down a path, JS, so don't stop me. Almost all my transactions were with buyers, and I developed that into a real good business. Now, I'm going to get off that and go to the next question, which is, when agents go through training, how much time is actually spent learning about a buyer's credit, debt, and loan readiness compared to pricing and marketing a home? And is that imbalance intentional or simply how the system evolved?
Well, and here's another good question to contemplate. The way it works in most states, and as we're at the Realty School, we're branching out, and what we're doing is an on-demand platform, which we're launching in multiple areas. The outline of the material for pre-licensing is pretty much established by state governing bodies, a real estate commission, Department of Commerce, and so forth. And the level of focus, the amount of the focus on listings, for example, on how to price a house may very well be like a 3-hour section of class. Versus on the financing side, we do have a little bit more of a focus on it in this market and in what we're seeing today. But the problem that I see when we do our classes, for example, we do quite a bit on the financing of how a buyer gets their loan. Now, the issue facing that is we explain to them, well, when you get a buyer, you got to bring 2 years of tax returns, 2 recent bank statements, 2 recent pay stubs. But I don't think they understand that half of the equation of going in is debt when they pull up their Social Security credit report. And then secondly, the fact that the interest rate is going to be predicated on the credit score. We touch lightly on it in our school, but most places never even talk about it at all.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring you in, because you've had so many years teaching this. And I know that you see and participate in all of the classes that are developed for you. Now, is there a meaningful course of instruction on credit scoring, or credit reporting? And if those areas are limited, what are the reasons within the current system? And do you think agents would benefit from a more well-rounded education that includes understanding credit reports and scoring?
I think the general public would benefit from an educational component of understanding credit scoring, because it affects everybody, not just when they're purchasing a house for the pricing of the loan, but also on their car insurance, home insurance, go down the list.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. So, when I'm looking at that as an agent's perspective, the pushback would be, well, I'm not a loan originator. I don't know anything about loans, which is actually a conflict of what we hear. Agents might run around the world and say, yo, I help people with the biggest financial transaction of their lives. But when it comes time to answer the question, if I offer 90% of list price, what will that make my house payment? And then the agent says, I don't know. I can't answer any financial questions. There right there is a conflict. I'm helping you with a big financial transaction. Just don't ask me questions. So there is a lack of education, not just in the credit worthiness, but even just in basic finance. I think the finance acumen that people have in the U.S. overall is weak. But agents should be very much specifically on top of that one, because it is rather important, number one, to the consumer, to build credibility. But number two, to be able to answer a simple question like, what's my house payment going to be at 90% rather than full price offer?
Right. Yeah.
So my understanding is that basic real estate courses focus heavily on laws and how they're applied, with less emphasis on sales techniques. So would you agree with that? And how well does that actually prepare agents for real world situations involving buyers and financing and structuring a deal?
Oh man, another good one. And it's interesting to see in Florida, for example. In Florida, we do a 63-hour pre-licensing class, and then you take a test and you can practice real estate. Within a year and a half, then you got to do a 45-hour post-licensing class, which does give the associate certain levels of sales skills, training, things to be able to use tactics to connect with people. And again, certain levels of knowledge of what is the difference between an FHA loan and a conventional loan, et cetera. But then in other states, for example, in Minnesota, you follow what the law says, and then their real estate regulatory body says something like this: you cannot do any type of topics on things like negotiating, marketing, sales skills to give it for an educational credit for that person. So it's going to be mandated by the state as to what they can do. But even then, it's just going to be, how do I apply? How do I fill out a 1003 mortgage application? What do I need to do? With very little understanding of indebtedness and loan consolidation. What impact does that have? So there's very, 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 very little given to that. And even in the mainstream agents out there, they don't even understand all of those things that could impact a buyer's capability. Now, the buyer goes in, gets declined from one lender. I guess I'm not good. And they don't understand that they can actually go out to a different lender and get approved. So they give up on the buyer. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. So from what you've seen, what causes more deals to fall apart? Issues with the property or issues with the buyer's ability to qualify for financing? And has that pattern changed over time, or has it consistently leaned in one or the other direction?
It's an interesting thing today. There's a new wave of buyers coming in, younger persons coming in. The age of purchasing is advancing into the 30s now. It used to be in the 20s. But one of the things we're seeing is, I want move-in ready condition. So when sellers are getting their houses ready today, they're bringing the properties up to be pretty. So I think that today it's like a 75-25. 75% of the reasons why the transaction might fall apart is due to some financing or appraisal issue, which is part of the financing process. And about a fourth of them are because of physical conditions of the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you think the industry fully understands the impact that credit reports, credit scores, and debt, you kind of already answered this, and debt collections have on whether a deal actually closes? Or is that still largely viewed as the lender's responsibility rather than something agents or even buyers should be aware of?
I say the latter. Don't ask me questions about finances. I don't know. I think agents need to know this, because just because I filed a bankruptcy doesn't mean I'm precluded from getting approved for a loan. Maybe I had a foreclosure, does not mean I'm a dead stop in getting a loan today. And even up to 1 year after the foreclosure, in some situations, a home buyer can become a buyer again. And sometimes people don't understand that, or they read a social media meme which tells them that they can't do that. And that becomes gospel truth. And to the point, and I hate personally, I just hate the saying that buyers are liars. I don't agree with that at all. I think that we as agents need to become more educated on what the financing piece is more about.
Interesting.
Okay. If you had the ability to redesign real estate training, how much emphasis would you place on credit, debt, and loan approval compared to the traditional listing education? And would that actually look like in practice for a new agent?
Yep. And that's an interesting perspective. I think in dealing with loans, specifically in like the buyer section, when we teach it, we speak about the loan application process, but we don't talk about the preceding events. For example, consistency in a job. low debt levels, how credit score will impact. So we don't speak to that. And in the licensing classes, we make it as, I hate to say, as easy as possible so they gain an understanding a little bit of what the process is for loan application, loan pre-approval, appraisal process, and then subsequently the loan full approval with underwriting. There's, I think that it's rather critical in a marketplace, especially when fintech, financial technology companies are becoming more and more the custom, where a consumer goes clickety-click, uploads all their documentation, and then gets basically a window that says, do you want to do the fixed rate? Do you want to do the adjustable rate? And they look at that and go, what is an adjustable rate? Seeing that more fintech technology companies are taking over a lot of mortgage stuff, and they're applying a cookie cutter approach to the approval process per Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, and so forth, that it's making the consumer go, who do I ask my questions to? So I think financial and loan acumen, credit understanding is going to be a crucial thing as we see this evolving even more so.
That's real interesting, which kind of leads me into the next question, because there's going to be some big changes coming. Part of it's here already, and that is that lending has shifted towards analyzing long-term financial behavior through models, excuse me, like FICO 10T and VantageScore 4, rather than relying on a simple snapshot score. So do you think real estate education has kept up with change, or are agents still being trained in an outdated snapshot version?
Basically, neither. I mean, this is going to sound terrible, but people will come out of meet with a buyer, and the buyer's got a piece of paper that says, or an email, you're pre-approved for this amount of money for purchase. And then many times an agent might assume that that's a golden ticket, man. This person's good for the purchase. And then we find out 2 or 3 days prior to the closing, when the underwriter is doing a re-verification of employment or a recheck on their credit report, it find out that we decided to lease a car. I quit my job. And right up until the moment of closing, this whole thing could fall apart. So from the agent's perspective, that lack of understanding could stop many transactions from falling apart. But to your point, John, they don't understand that there are loans out there that looks at what you mentioned about the predictive behavior beforehand, not just credit scoring, but the other things that are available for the lender to look at to determine, is this a high risk or low risk borrower?
Yes. Yeah. I know. And that's some of the stuff that we're delving into now. Both JS and I, the 10T and the VantageScore 4, how these are going to merge, because the balancing of the criteria for FICO is different than what's in the VantageScore 4. I don't know how it's going to work out. I haven't seen that. I'm investigating it, but I think it's going to be a real interesting time. Allegedly, VantageScore 4 was to get credit thin files through and approved, but I don't think it's going to work out as well as they think it might. But that's just a personal opinion at this point.
Yeah, we have to see it in action. But it kind of makes me think about this next question a little bit. So I feel like you've made it very clear the agents really aren't getting financial education. There's a definite line, especially where you are. If an agent focused more on helping buyers understand credit, debt, and loan readiness, wouldn't that improve their long-term success? Or does the current business model still reward listing volume above everything else? Is that how it's taught?
The way we personally teach it is the agent who gains financial acumen will have tools and resources that will help them be successful for the long term. That's the way we teach it. And again, that's 50% of the transaction are buyers. But we always say that if you have financial acumen, you're better poised to be successful for long-term success.
Right.
And even when we're teaching the classes and we show them on their devices how they can download a simple financial calculator so they could answer basic questions. And they're just amazed when they push the buttons and they're, they all come out. Oh, there's an amortization button and it lays out all 360 payments. What the oohs and ahs come out of the classroom. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I've done a lot of financial education myself, so it's always fun when they realize something was at their fingertips the whole time.
Yep.
Continuing education often covers the physical aspects of a home, systems, safety, structure, but very little on credit or credit scoring, as we've talked about. So since most buyers rely on financing, would you see credit education as a valuable addition to both basic and continuing education?
Oh, I would say it's a good contribution. The first-time home buyers, 94% of them, surprise, surprise, are financing their house. Mm-hmm. So when I'm dealing with a first-time home buyer at that 20 to 35 years of age, this is a person who was never taught in school how to balance a bank account, who was never taught anything in terms of financial acumen. So this person comes in and he says, well, let's just explain to you how to buy a house. And the focus is on, doors and sticks and bricks. But to get the person to understand, instead of just shuffling them off to the loan originator and say, if you have any financial concerns, talk to the LO, the mortgage loan originator or loan officer. So if they have a better handle on that, like I said earlier, it builds credibility in the buyer's mind when you have that ability to answer some questions. So I think in terms of CE, continuing education, as well as pre-license education, absolutely. We try to personally focus on that quite a bit. But again, it's us maybe against the other tide that's shifting in other directions that says, you got to list. Mm-hmm. But that's what we do at our school.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. It's good to know.
We're coming to the end now, and what I wanted to do as far as expanding or the closing, what I want to say is this. JS and I, what we really do here is pulling back the curtain on something most people never stop and question. The near total absence of real credit education in almost every single stage of a real estate transaction. From the moment a buyer starts thinking about a home, they're stepping into a process that is heavily driven by credit, debt, and financial behavior. Yet, oddly enough, the people guiding that process, agents, and often even the consumers themselves, are rarely trained to understand how much those factors actually work. Mm-hmm. The system is built around credit, but almost no one is taught how to read it, interpret it, or strategically manage it. Loan officers, in many cases, are attempted to place a person into a product. So what happens? Buyers get pre-licensed or pre-qualified based on a moment in time, not a pattern. Agents write offers without fully understanding whether the file is stable enough to survive underwriting. And when something does go wrong, and it does sometimes, it's treated like a surprise instead of what it really is. A predictable outcome that no one was trained to see coming. That's the gap we're exposing, because this isn't about blaming agents or even the education system. It's about recognizing that an entire layer of the transaction has been overlooked. Credit isn't a side note. It's the foundation. It determines access, pricing, approval, and timing, and yet it's barely discussed, as you described, in licensing courses or continuing education in any meaningful way. What we're pushing for is the shift from surface level transaction knowledge to structural understanding. When professionals start to understand credit the same way underwriters do, everything changes. Deals become cleaner, buyers become better prepared, and instead of reacting to problems at the finish line, you start eliminating them at the starting line. That's the real opportunity, and right now, it's hiding in plain sight.
So, Mike, I want to give you an opportunity. Well, first off, thank you again for joining us, because I really love your insight. But also, I love hearing that you are trying to teach some of this stuff when you're doing your education to the realtors.
Thank you.
But what we have neglected to do, Mike, is tell us the name of your company.
Oh, sure. We are the Realty School, therealtyschool.com. And we do license and continuing education in a couple of states, specifically Minnesota and Wisconsin. We do on-demand classes, in-person classes. So we're the only company in the state of Minnesota right now doing live in-person real estate classes for our students. Many of them, of our competitors, have gone to on demand, which I also think lowers the bar a little bit when they go for the minimum type of education just to fulfill their obligations. So we've been doing this now in our school for 14 years plus. I was teaching at another facility, another company for years. And the takeaways I had was, as a real estate licensee, we don't want to teach people fluffy information. We want things that will make them more productive, protect the consumer, make it so that transactions go together smoothly. And that's kind of been our North Star that we keep pointing toward. And informative, convenient, and fun. If we can do that, we take a pearl away from each class we teach, we've done okay by today. So.
Well, that's awesome. I thank you so much. So, to our listeners, this is Michael Brennan from the Realty School. Again, you can find his company at therealtyschool.com. For all of your real estate educational needs, obviously, I'm going to direct you there if he's in your state. But remember, he did say specifically, he is one of the few providing some of that financial education. And it's not a loan officer class. This is for real estate agents. And it's going to be very, very critical. We thank you for listening to Give Me Credit. You know, this is J.S. Waldo. This is where you can find me on Substack. And we're here again with our credit genius, John Mackey. And you can find him at creditgenius.substack.com. This has been Give Me Credit. Please like, subscribe, ring that bell. You all know the drill. And all of your comments, they help us. It helps. Everything you do helps us so much. So please leave us comments, leave us questions. Like I said, like and subscribe. So again, thank you so much for joining us, Mike. And John, thank you for today's discussion.
You bet. This has been a lot of fun. Mike, is great to see you because you and I go back a long way. We don't go back as far as when you had hair, but
and yours was brown.
Yeah.
And yours was brown.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's true. It's true. But I enjoyed talking to you again, and I know we'll do it again in the future.
All my best to everybody. God bless. Do take care.
Thank you. Good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.